What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Devy Route YouTube channel. I'm your host, Kevin Coleman, and we're back with another Dynasty edition this time. And today we're going to be looking at Dynasty quarterback and the tiers. So in these tier videos, what I like to do is kind of go through my rankings, where their current ADP is as of May, right? So into May and looking into June, and their trade value and guys that I'd be going and getting, and maybe some Dynasty buys and just all around Dynasty knowledge of the quarterback position, because right now it's kind of hard. When you look at the quarterback spot, you really want to be, if you're comfortable, you want to grab two guys in the top 14 maybe. Where's that tier at? How do you grab them? How do you acquire? Where's that tier up or tier down? So that's what we're going to be looking at here on this episode, and then we'll be diving into it. So hit that like and subscribe button after the intro, and then we'll dive in on the other side. All right, so like I said, we're going to go over Dynasty tiers. What does that look like? We had to put our guy, Jalen Hurts, give him a shout out for what he was able to do last year. So we're going to be diving into it. So let's take a look at tier one. So, when you look at tier one, the question isn't really, is it Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen? The question is just Jalen Hurts deserve to be in that tier one? I think based on what he did last year, 375 fantasy points, we saw the points per game, what he was able to produce, his rushing upside. I do think he's kind of in that lower tier one, right? Number 3. But these are guys that are all worth probably 3 first-round picks, right? When you're thinking of that. I think the cheapest they're ever going to be is in a startup. So if you get those, quarterback, pick 1, 2, or 3 in that beginning, in that tier one, that's generally who you're drafting. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, in that area. Now, let's talk about what their trade value is. And we see this a lot. Like, what are you trading these guys for? So I want to show you kind of different trades. So Mahomes for Burrow, McLaurin, Irv Smith, and 409. That's the tier down into tier 2. And you get some assets. I don't hate it. I probably would keep Patrick Mahomes, in my opinion, based on just dynasty. I mean, like, what's the point of tearing down for like a Terry McLaurin? Try to get a younger wide receiver. Maybe you can kind of get in that range of Devonta Smith or Olave, maybe, right? Depending on kind of the asset. That's how I would look at that one. The next one, Josh Allen, the 207 for Jimmy G, Lance, Etienne, Ramondre. There is no way I'm trading Josh Allen for that. I don't care if you're rebuilding or whatever. You rebuild around Allen. You retool, right? We've talked about that. Allen, to me, that is a you're selling way too low on Allen as far as the dynasty kind of asset that he is. Now, Jalen Hurts, Deion Jackson, Jordan Akins, so that doesn't really matter. For Derek Carr, CMC, Rachaad White. Again, I understand like CMC could be the running back 1 this year, right? Rachaad White probably in line for usage, maybe low in running back 1, and maybe you think Derek Carr is a quarterback 2. I just have a hard time looking at Jalen Hurts and selling him for that. Like, I just think he's too much of an elite asset, right? I have a hard time moving on from a guy like Hurts with that asset, what he is in Dynasty, for those type of pieces. Now, as far as tier 2 goes, I think there's 2 guys that sit in this. It's Burrow and Herbert, right? When we're thinking of what they are, some would maybe put Burrow in that tier 1. Some have him there. So like you saw that last trade, maybe it's that. Lack of rushing upside, though, from Burrow really puts him in this tier 2 for me. But both of these guys are elite to build your team around. Like, I really feel like, Herbert had a down year last year. Fractured rib cartilage last year, shoulder surgery, labrum tear. He's pretty much have all that. He's got Kellen Moore back. They added Quentin Johnston. So, like, from me perspective, Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert fit those same categories for me in that tier 2. Now, as far as what their values at in Dynasty, Joe Burrow for Tua, Kendre Miller, DK Metcalf. Again, I still think you stick with Burrow. I feel like you're tearing down too far to Tua on that one, right? And I like Tua. I wrote a spotlight for Tua last year for Football Guys where I write. And, I said it could be a low-end quarterback 1, and he was on pace to do that. But the concussions just worry me, right? Why would you give up a Joe Burrow-like asset for a Tua for question marks? And in this deal, I've seen for Herbert a couple times this offseason, Justin Herbert for Kyler Murray in a 24 first. I understand, like, rebuilding, pivoting it off. You still think Murray can be a top 8 asset. I don't necessarily hate this deal. You're either in or out on Murray. That's really the case for this one. If you're in on Murray, you like this deal because you think for this rushing upside and what he can do, he'll still be a top 8 guy, plus you get a first, right? And you losing Herbert is not really tearing him down too much. Now, as far as my tier 3, now, again, just to reiterate, if you haven't watched one of these videos and go through it, I have my rankings and I have their ADP. That's why you'll see like QB6 different, right? So ADP is where they're going, what my rank is on the left side. So you have Justin Fields at 6, ADP 9.258, QB8. He's across the board. Some people value him as high as I do, as 6. Some have him low, like 10, 11. So really, that's the one fluctuating one. Like I see him in a lot of Dynasty sell articles right now. So just kind of keep that in mind. Trevor Lawrence sitting there at 7 for me, and Lamar Jackson. I do think Lamar is going to have a huge, huge upside. Now, if you watch this video on the day this releases, I don't think my spotlight will be open, but I wrote my first spotlight this offseason on Lamar Jackson. I'm expecting huge things for him. So I think you're comfortable with him in any of these tiers as far as that tier 3 goes. Now, where's that value, right? So when you're thinking of these guys, like I think when you're looking at Lawrence and Jackson, they're a little safer than Fields, right? Because of, what is that long-term viability with him? He's got to step up and he has to be in there. But you got to remember, Hurts was being valued as like, where was Hurts at this time? And now he's in that tier 1, right? Now, I'm not saying Fields can get in the tier 1. I think Lawrence and Jackson have safer floors. Fields is definitely the ceiling play, right? So just kind of I understand where that's coming from. Now, some deals going out there. Kyler Murray is a hot one to get traded and trade back and forth because rebuilders are definitely going after him. So Kyler Murray, Javonte Williams for Justin Fields and Miles Sanders. Don't necessarily hate that deal, on both sides. If you're playing for 2024, Murray and Williams are definitely safe bets. On the other one, Trevor Lawrence, CEH, Greg Dulcich, and 24 first for Justin Herbert and Sam Laporta. I actually like trading up for Herbert, right? Now, if you think Lawrence is close to this tier and getting all those assets plus a first, I actually like that side too, right? So the reason why I show you these deals is not to say what side is the best, right? Like I think you can pretty much argue based on what team roster is probably both sides here. But this is just to give you an idea of like, what could I maybe move up? How do I move? How do I tier up? How do I kind of get those assets and kind of get a guy that I want? Now, Lamar Jackson, Gus Edwards, Ronald Jones for Dak, Alvin Kamara, and David Njoku. I think this is smash on the Lamar side, right? Because I think I'm projecting, I don't really care about Edwards and Jones. This is essentially Jackson for Prescott, Kamara, and Njoku. Now, I like those 3 assets, but again, Lamar offers such a good upside. He could be a top 3 quarterback this year. And if you want to go for it, Lamar could be that option. Now, tier 4 is when you start getting a little, right? So like question marks. Kyler Murray, I still have at 9, but there are some people that don't have him in this tier. They've dropped him down even further. Dak Prescott at 10 feels like a pretty much low-end quarterback 1. That's what you're really looking at. Dak, Deshaun Watson sitting there at 11 for me, and then Anthony Richardson slips into this tier because of that rushing upside. When you're looking at these guys, I think reality is like, Prescott and Watson they can have top 12 weeks, but their ceiling is probably capped as elite fantasy options. Murray has shown that he can have that, but coming off an ACL, how is that going to target, impact his rushing ability? The real wild card here is Anthony Richardson. If Anthony Richardson can be, he is the guy in this group outside of Murray that can have top 5 potential because of his rushing upside. I know Christian Williams just put out his projections. He has him for over 1,000 yards rushing, which could be a little hefty projection, but it could happen. So when you're thinking of that, when you're looking at like, hey, can I project him? That's what you're projecting him here for. Now, as far as value for these guys, we'll go through this a little quicker. Kyler Murray for CeeDee Lamb for Anthony Richardson, Drake London. That's the ultimate, going for it on the rookie side, trying to get those young players with like London and Richardson, where you have a CeeDee Lamb with a top 4 dynasty asset. Kyler Murray could be in there. I like both sides of that deal. Next one, Dak Prescott, Madison for CJ Stroud, Miles Sanders. So obviously getting a little bit younger on the Stroud side, whereas Dak kind of gives you that safe kind of floor as a QB2. If you could go get Dak as a QB2 this year on a contending roster, I don't hate giving up Stroud because Stroud is kind of, you're hoping he's a QB10, right? Overall, like that's probably what you're thinking of here for a ceiling. Now, Deshaun Watson for Olave at 205 and 305. Deshaun tends to be a little bit valued as an undervalued buy right now. Like I like Olave. But if you can go kind of pivot off him for 2 picks and Olave for Deshaun, and all reports based on what we've seen from beat reporters, 32, I think it's 30-second beat reporters on Twitter. If you're not following that, you should. It kind of dives into like what's going on. Deshaun's looked the best he's ever looked. And so we were hearing a lot of good buzz out of that, but we haven't heard from Deshaun in a while. And then the next one, Anthony Richardson for a 24 first for Trevor Lawrence, right? So you're going to pair those guys in there. So if you have Anthony Richardson, but you really want to go get Lawrence, maybe you give up first and Richardson for that. If you believe that Lawrence can take that next step and be a top 7, 8 dynasty asset. Now, tier 5, we're going to get the younger guys and some question marks, right? So Bryce and CJ, it's easy to kind of step there. I think they have safe floors. What could they be, realistically moving forward? I think that's the question. Can they be like a top 8 guy, or are you going to sit in that 8 to 12 category, which I think is kind of where they're at? Tua and Trey are the questions, right? So if you look right here, Tua's pretty much on board with ADP. The one guy that I'm definitely higher on is Trey Lance. He has 16 in my rankings, but he's going as quarterback 25. Now, I just did a San Francisco video, and I kind of dived into that scenario, but he is the ultimate, like, if you can get him at quarterback 25, whereas I have him at QB 16, you have to. It's QB 3 on your roster because I think the ceiling and the potential is going to be there, and that's kind of where you have to go with. Now, as far as value goes here, Bryce Young for Mark Andrews and a tight end premium. Again, pretty fair value on both sides there. Tight end premium, I think Mark Andrews and Todd Monken's offense is going to have a very, very solid season. Bryce, maybe he's your QB3 and you kind of want to go solidify a tight end premium position. CJ Stroud in a first for Bijan. So again, maybe you're one running back away. You think you can go get that guy. You have Stroud. You're going to give up that first because you're looking at the running backs next year and there's some question marks, and you go get an elite asset like Bijan. Next one, Tua for Saquon. You know, this is the ultimate, like, Saquon's probably got a year-ish, maybe 2, right? Tua, though, if he hits, he's a quarter, like a QB 12. And he could be that guy in that offense with Hill, Waddle, kind of running that area. So I kind of lean the quarterbacks in these scenarios because of the long-term asset that they can become. But Tua, again, with the concussions, is risk. And then Trey Lance for Aaron Rodgers. I've kind of highlighted this trade a couple of times. Contender going for it, wants Rodgers. Maybe a solid quarterback too. Lance, question marks. But if I'm rebuilding, this is the last time I can get off Rodgers. Lance is not a bad option to go and try to grab. Now, tier 6, we got to start getting into some of the older guys, kind of the veterans. Daniel Jones, Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff, Derek Carr. Really, these are like solid quarterback 2s, right? They're going to be looking for guys that maybe you draft that elite tier 1. So you're going to pair like Josh Allen maybe with like Daniel Jones, right? Or you want to wait a little bit, maybe pair Josh Allen and Jared Goff. You think he's going to get that contract extension. That's how those guys look there. Now, as far as like deals, Daniel Jones in a 3rd for Kyler Murray and a 2 and 9. Again, rebuilder, contender. Kirk Cousins for Mac Jones, Madison, and Zamir White. Madison, Zamir White, not to me, Mac Jones. So you're basically hoping if you trade away Kirk Cousins, you're hoping Mac Jones' ceiling is Kirk Cousins, right? So this is the ultimate kind of retooling that quarterback position on your dynasty roster, kind of going for it again, right? That's kind of how I look at that one. Next one, Jared Goff, Akers, Deontay Ford for Trevor Lawrence. So this is what you have to pay if you want to go get an elite top tier quarterback. So just know that, right? So the cheapest that these quarterbacks are going for is in your startups. You got to grab them early. That's just the reality of the quarterback position. Derek Carr, Calvin Ridley for Tannehill, Brown, and Waller. Again, you're looking at this. I love Marquise Brown. I think he's wide receiver 1 in that. Well, obviously he's wide receiver 1 without DeAndre. But again, Waller, declining asset. Tannehill, declining asset. Ridley, maybe an emerging asset. I saw Ridley go for a 25 first recently. Looks like it's late, but that's the first time we've seen him in that first category. And then you have Derek Carr, who could be a solid quarterback too on that roster, right? Now, tier 7, this is where you start getting into it, and we're not going to go through trades for every single one of these guys. So this is really a clump, and this is what we're seeing in Superflex leagues right now. I got asked about Russell Wilson today. Could he be a solid quarterback too? I think so. I think Russell's in a QB purgatory though, right? Because you're not trading Russell for any of those guys in above tiers. You can't really tier up with Russell because his value is too low. I don't think you can really tier up to get him, but you're really solid. I think if he's your QB3, you're happy. If he's your QB2, he's got to take that next step in Peyton's offense, which he can do, but it's asking a lot, right? Will Levis, 22. What are we going to do with Will Levis? He's kind of going around quarterback 28, so I have him a little higher. But if you guys get that starting job over Tannehill, you're excited. Geno Smith, Aaron Rodgers and Kenny Pickett. I still think Aaron Rodgers is a buy in Dynasty if you're a contender. I don't mind going and buying Aaron Rodgers for what he's going for, especially if you're a contender and you made the playoffs last year. Now, the next guy's Stafford. Don't know about his health. So from what we've heard, he looks like he's having fun, playing really well. That's the case. Mac Jones. Can he be a solid quarterback too? I think he's undervalued right now. I'm not a huge Mac Jones guy, and if you've listened to Debbie Real for years, you know that. But what I would say is, like, with Bill O'Brien there, he has higher upside, okay? Jimmy G, 28. Yeah, Jordan Love. I will say I'm lower on Jordan Love as consensus. So you see his ADP is quarterback 18. I am at 29. I think Love might be a sell. So if we go through some of the things, so Love, Long, and a second for J.K. Dobbins. If you're a running back away and Love's been sitting on your roster for 4 years, like he's been sitting in the Packers depth chart, the quarterback room, for the last 4 years, and you can go get Dobbins and you feel like you can have that, I like that deal for Dobbins. Russell Wilson for Najee Harris, right? So again, these are kind of the assets you're going for. Harris, older running back, as considered in Dynasty, right? Could be in line for a big year, and maybe you want to kind of pivot off for Wilson. Aaron Rodgers for Jahan Dotson. Again, there's just a Dotson hive out there that really expect a big breakout. But if you can go get a super flex quarterback and Dotson's your wide receiver 5, I think you've got to go kind of do that. And then Mac Jones for Brandon Ayuk. I like Ayuk in this deal, but again, it just depends on how desperate you are at that quarterback position. Now, best of the rest guys that are kind of getting their ADPs around there. Tannehill, Desmond Ridder, Sam Howell, Brock Purdy could be a value, right? I have him kind of low in my rankings, but he's quarterback 24 right now. He's going before Lance. Hendon Hooker, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Jacoby Brissett. Those are the guys that are still getting drafted around that area, just to kind of give you aware. So hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope the trades are helping kind of understanding where the value's at out there for these guys and that quarterback position, which definitely is going through kind of a influx of talent, youth, but we didn't see necessarily like, hey, Bryce is not a top 10 quarterback yet, right? So we're seeing that development there. The key comes down to like Anthony Richardson and some of these guys and how valuable they are. So appreciate you guys tuning in. Hit that like and subscribe button. I will check you guys later. Make sure you check out the Patreon. Let me know. Go join it. Send me a DM. Say, hey, this is what we want to see in it. We're always here to help you guys. Appreciate you guys.